Hi, this video is about the recent release of Cursor 1.0, a major name change. There's some interesting new settings, and I've dug into the documentation and read the fine print, and I'm gonna show you those details in this video. And they just upgraded from 0.5 to 1.0. They released 0.5 about 2 weeks prior to this. They do have a video. It's only their second video on the YouTube channel, but it's very light on the details. It's only 2 minutes long. I'll put a link to it below. And so is this just a surface level thing, or is it actually a significant change? So the first thing on here is automatic code review with BugBot. Personally, I'm not a fan of this feature, and part of the reason has to do with if you dig through the details and you go down to the bottom, the pricing, it's priced on max mode, and AI models, their ability to kind of work fully autonomously in a loop to try to solve things, I think they create about as many problems as they solve, or oftentimes they kind of go off on a tangent and it just becomes a huge mess. So personally, I'm not a big fan of this, on top of the fact that I think this could get very expensive very quickly. I'll put a link directly to this right here, but basically it's checking PRs for potential bugs and issues. I don't think this is very useful, to be honest. It's partially because this is like the first version of it, and the models I just don't think are there to be kind of like let loose. So this is not really even a fault of Cursor. I'm not gonna be using this feature. And the second feature is very similar. Background agent, again, you're letting the models loose to just work on a loop. And there's a lot of fine print here. When I go into the Cursor settings, the beta, if I go to enable it, so let's read this. Background agents not yet in privacy mode. So basically, in order to turn on background agents, you have to enable them to see all your prompts and see all your code in order for that to work. That's not very good. Personally, if you're working on any significantly valuable code, you probably don't want to do this. On top of, I don't think it's going to give you very good results a lot of the times. I think it's already kind of a stretch, the level of agenticness of the code in the models right now and are used in Cursor. Let's actually check out some of the fine print here as well. So again, this is also in max mode, so this is going to get very expensive. You can see our infrastructure has not even audited by third parties. The background agent has a much bigger surface area of attacks compared to other Cursor features, so it's not quite as secure. This is a bunch of red flags here, to be honest. But this is not a knock on Cursor. I think they're going in a direction that people want, and that I think is interesting. But I don't want to be their guinea pig with my code on this, and I wouldn't recommend you be it either. I think the models aren't there yet for this to be very good, and it might be quite a long time before they are. I don't care what the metrics say, and if you notice like, oh, there's a new coding model that's at the top, and it makes you think, oh, there's a big change, and a lot of times it's like, yeah, no, they scored a couple points higher on some test that isn't even a real estimation of its ability to code. It's kind of a narrow slice of it. So I definitely won't be using this one. Expensive, insecure, and probably not incredibly helpful. Agent in Jupyter notebooks. I don't use Jupyter, but I know some of the machine learning engineers that work for me sometimes use these, so I imagine that's useful. I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not super into that. Okay, so memories. I'm curious how this will work out. So if we go into the Cursor settings and we go into rules, you can see the memories. And right now I don't have any memories because it's new and I haven't used this since the upgrade. We can have it generate memories. If I disable privacy mode, I don't think this is incredibly useful. It can automatically generate some rules, but a lot of the times what you want in one project, you don't want in another. And so I don't think this is super useful overall. Kind of respect them going down this path. ChatGPT does this okay, and that's a much more generalized agent or bot or chat experience. And I think it makes more sense there than it does here. Okay, so one of their objectives is to make MCP's tools much easier to use. And I think they've actually done a pretty good job of that. They have a directory, I'll put a link to it below. But let's say we want to add a tool here. Let's say we want to add Zapier, just for giggles. Because right now, before, you can see there's nothing in my MCP tools, and we can follow these instructions and add these directly. It looks like it's not quite as simple. Some of these are a bit simpler. I think in their example, let's say we wanted to do linear. I don't actually use linear. Let's see if it pops up here. There we go. After a few seconds, it loaded this. Make this a little bit easier for me to add. To be honest, I know that a lot of people love MCP servers. I'm not a super big fan of them. I think they're okay. It smooths over a few things, but I don't think it's really a major thing for me personally. But it's nice to be able to do, not have to do a few less things. And I like where they're headed with this. I like just let's make it as easy as possible, because sometimes MCP servers can be kind of weird and a bit of a pain, and any additional support they have to make that a little bit easier is potentially useful. Again, I'll put a link to their directory, which doesn't have a lot in it. Richer chat responses. Basically here, they just enabled their chat to have diagrams and tables. Nothing really complex. They also have new settings within chat. I'm gonna go into them in a second because there's some really interesting ones in there. And then they have a new dashboard within your account. Personally, I don't find that to be incredibly useful, but the first one is quite interesting. Let's check those out. So if we go into chat, there's actually some things that I'm going to change here that I've already looked at, but I like this completion. Lately I've used the agent and it takes some amount of time. And sometimes you're just like waiting on it and you're checking on it. I wouldn't mind it playing a sound. Here's another thing, allows full contents of selected folder. I thought this already was the way it was set up, but I definitely want that. Include project structure, include the simplified directory tree as context. I think that's useful as well. So we're going to turn that on. Web search tool, yes, we want to leave that on. Apply cursor ignore files to all subdirectories. Changes setting will require a restart. And that's not really a big deal. Remove the last context pill in the composer when pressing backspace. Don't care. Some other stuff that's already turned on. Do we want to prevent it from running MCP tools automatically? Probably not. Prevent it from deleting files automatically. I can always undelete a file if it really does do something bad. I don't really have a problem with that. So some interesting new settings in the cursor settings. Go ahead and check those out and set them however you want. I always like when they add little switches like this. I think it's useful to customize the experience for what makes sense for you, because I imagine that everybody has slightly different preferences. And that's the end of it. Personally, I thought the upgrade from, I think it was like 0.42 to 0.50 was more significant. They added the background agent last time. They added several other features that I really liked. I think there was one major one that allowed you to tag the folder. And I thought that was one of the most useful things that solved or came close to solving one of my biggest pet peeves with Cursor. I don't plan on using the BugBot. I don't plan on using the background agent. I don't use Jupyter. I don't think the memories will be incredibly useful. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I like the MCP one. I think I might use MCP servers a little bit more. I mean, I like the new settings, but overall it feels like it's maybe there was an investor that was like, hey, why don't you just name it 1.0 so we can, for money reasons. That's what it seems like here. Don't be in beta anymore, because they went to 0.5 and then 2 weeks later went to 1.0. What do you think? Is there anything in here that I missed? Anything that you're real excited about? Do you think I'm wrong about any of these new features? I'll put a bunch of links below directly to specific parts of the feature so you can dig into it yourself if you want to read deeper. So let me know what you think. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.